I think it's absolutely fantastic that people on the left and the right of politics are now having this conversation about first past the post and how undemocratic it is. Howdy folks, greetings. Now, I have to be honest, I am a massive nerd when it comes to looking at the facts and figures for elections, and this one in particular is fascinating. It really is. The big question on everyone's mind really is how unfair this election has been when it comes to voter share and the amount of seats that each party is getting. And it's fantastic that we're having these conversations. It really is, because we've been talking about this for a long time and more people are talking about this now. Now, there's many to talk about, but the glaringly obvious one, the first one, is Reform Party UK, isn't it? Getting 14% of the voter share. 14% of people voted for Reform UK. They got 5 MPs. Same with the Greens, 6.7% of the voter share. They got 4 MPs. The other one, the fact that the Lib Dems are very close with Reform on voter share at 12%, but ended up with 72 MPs compared to Reform. That is the most glaringly obvious, insane stat, where you can get 12% of the voter share, get 72 MPs, and get 14% and get 5. And I think the other biggie is the Labour result here. 33% of the voter share, and they have a stonking majority of 411 seats. Nearly 70% of the country did not vote for Labour, but they have a massive majority. And it's also crazy when you look back at previous results from different elections. So this election, Labour won 33% of the voter share and got 9.7 million votes and got a massive majority of 412 seats. Back in 2017, Labour got 40% of the voter share and lost. So 33% of the people voted and got a massive majority for Labour, but back in 2017, 40% of people voted for Labour and they lost the election. You look at physical numbers as well. 12.8 million people voted for Jeremy Corbyn in 2017. He got 40% of the vote share. 2024, 9.7 million people voted, 33% of the vote share, and a massive majority. It just doesn't make sense, does it? Even in 2019, where Labour lost massively, the vote share was slightly reduced to Keir Starmer, 32%, but physical votes, they got 10.2 million physical votes and had the most crushing defeat they've ever had, 203 seats. Now, those on the left of politics have been talking about this for a long time because it's been affecting them over the last 14 years. We've had elections where Jeremy Corbyn has won 12.8 million votes and the Conservatives 13.6, but they win the election. We've had the Green Party pick up over 1 million votes and get 1 seat. We've had Conservative Party after Conservative Party keep getting majority governments with a vote share of 36%. 36% of the country voted for them. Nearly 65% of the country did not want them in power. So on the left of politics, this has been a massive thing for a long time, but I haven't really seen it on the right of politics. I thought maybe back in 2015, when UKIP got 12% of the voter share and ended up with 1 MP, they received 3.8 million votes in 2015 and received 1 MP. I thought the conversation would start on the right of politics back then, but I think because David Cameron gave the Brexit referendum, and that's what the UKIP push was all about, Brexit. I think because they got that referendum, the conversation on changing the voting system died out, because they got what they got. And let's face it, the majority of these UKIP reform voters were Conservative voters before. So first past the post for the last 14 years has served them well. But now the pendulum has changed, where we get 14% of the voters voting for reform and getting 5 MPs. They're seeing that 33% of the country are voting for Labour and they are getting a massive majority to govern. And now that folks on the right of politics are getting affected by first past the post, I think the conversation is starting to happen more about changing the voting system. But another thing that I am seeing now is because the pendulum has swung, where first past the post is now favouring the Labour Party, there's a lot of Labour supporters that were championing a change to the voting system before, and now a little bit wary about it. They're thinking, oh, if we change the PR Are we going to get a reform conservative government? I also hear a lot of commentators on the left, in a way, doing this childish thing where, oh, a change to the voter system was our thing on the left. Now the right want it because it serves them. It's childish. Everyone knows that a change to the voting system is needed in the UK, whatever your politics are. If you're on the right or the left, it needs to be democratic. Now, I want to look a little bit into how this election would have played out if we had a proportional representation voting system. This website on here has calculated it from the results and the votes that we got. So going by these stats, Labour still would have been the largest party, but they nowhere near had enough for a majority. They would have needed nearly another 100 seats to make a majority. So you would have ended up with a Labour, Lib Dem, Green Party coalition. The opposition party still would have been the Conservatives. Reform would have got 94 seats and been the third party in government. But really, it's a bit too simplistic just to take the results of the election and put them through a proportional representation framework. What you have to remember is everything would have changed if this vote had been done on a PR voting system. So going down, first of all, looking at Labour, I think Labour would have lost and gained through PR. I think they would have lost a lot of votes to the Greens, but they would have also gained a lot of votes from the Lib Dems. The Lib Dems are there as a party who, for disgruntled Tory or Labour voters that don't quite want to make the massive transition, they want a safe place in the middle, and they're a tactical vote. But this is what I'm saying, when you're working with a PR framework, it changes absolute everything. This is why it's so difficult to actually predict what this election would have been under PR, because the Lib Dems would have had freedom, I think, to be a much more pro-European party under proportional representation. I think they would have thought that's probably the best way to gain votes. Under first past the post, they're happy to just sit back, not really say too much, and just let those Labour and Conservative voters come to them. But under PR, they would have had to try and get the votes in. And I think they would have been a lot more pro-European. So they would have picked up a good voter base from that. The Green Party would have picked up a lot more seats. They would have stolen a lot of Labour voters. Scotland and Wales, I think, would have been relatively the same. But the big one is Reform UK, isn't it? Again, it's hard to judge under PR if they would have kept the same voter base, if it would have increased, if it would have lessened. I think they would have lost a few votes if people knew that their Reform vote really mattered. I think Reform was a protest vote for a lot of people, knowing that they're not actually going to get anywhere near power. We saw it over in France with the European elections, where a lot of people voted for Le Pen. But when it came crunch time to actually decide who governs France, they actually shied away from those sort of politics. And I think you'd see the same thing in this country. Now, as for the Tories, they would have actually slightly benefited from PR voting systems, strangely enough. They would have gone up to 157 seats. Now, they got 6.8 million votes in this election. A figure that still blows my mind. It really does blow my mind that 6.8 million people, when it came to voting time, looked at the country, looked at what was on offer, what political parties were on offer, and thought to themselves, yeah, let's have another 5 years of that. It still blows my mind. Wherever you sit politically, this country is broken in every single aspect. NHS, education, policing, prisons, potholes, government debt, immigration, everything is worse. So it really does blow my mind that 6.8 million people still voted for the Conservatives. And the only thing that I can think of why that is they are just pure Tory cultists. They will vote for him no matter what. And without doubt, you have the same on the Labour side as well. You will probably have a good 6 million people that will always vote Labour, no matter what. Now, would that change under a PR voting system? It's hard to say. Would people feel more comfortable about voting for other parties and not sticking with the two-party system? Maybe the Tory vote might have come down slightly, but I think there is still a large amount of that 6.8 million Conservative voters that just generally believe that they are the ruling party. Jacob Rees-Mogg said it, didn't he? They're the natural rulers of this country, the Conservatives, and I think a large portion of this country believes that. But also the other thing to take into consideration with the PR voting system is it would spawn a lot of smaller parties as well. If you go down to some of the smaller parties that didn't even pick up any votes at all. Best example, the Workers' Party of Britain, over 200,000 votes. Now that would have picked them up a few seats under PR. The Social Democratic Party, 33,000, maybe a seat, who knows. But you got the Yorkshire Party, the Rejoin the EU Party. Now I think that would probably be swallowed up by the Lib Dems under a PR voting system. But all these smaller parties would make a difference. One thing I've often said about Reform Party is that they're nationalist conservative, but economically they're very right wing. And there isn't really a party that is a national socialist party. Now, obviously, I don't mean the Nazis, but I just mean a party that is nationalist and conservative, like Reform are. They believe in tight immigration laws, anti-LGBT, this sort of stuff, but economically left wing. They believe in higher taxes for the rich, better public services, nationalisation of railways, of water, of energy. And I've often said this is a party that has been completely lacking in this country. There isn't really a party that is socially conservative but economically left-wing. And I think if there was one under PR, which there would be, they'd take a chunk of Reform Party's votes as well. So what do you think, folks? Please give me your comments down below. I think it's absolutely fantastic that people on the left and the right of politics are now having this conversation about first past the post and how undemocratic it is. I know people are fearful of changing the voting system because they think the extremes will come into power, whether it's the extremes on the right or the extremes on the left, but I don't believe this to be true. Every single election pretty much for the last 30 years has been won in the centre of politics. Britain is mainly a centre-left or centre-right opinionated country. You know, go all the way back to John Major, to Tony Blair, to David Cameron, to Theresa May, even Boris Johnson to an extent. I mean, that election mainly was won on Brexit, and Brexit is not a left-right issue. But if you look at a lot of his policies, especially when it comes to net zero and things like that, he was certainly more to the centre. Every election over the last 30 years has been won in the centre ground. So with a PR voting system, you would still get a government that is relatively centre ground. Now, if the 2024 election was fought on a PR voting system, I think you'd still maybe probably just have a majority centre Labour government, or you'd have a Labour Lib Dem pushing for closer relations with the EU, or a Labour Green coalition. But the Tories are done. The Tories are absolutely done. There is no way. A lot of people thought that you might get a Reform Party Conservative coalition. No chance. The Tories are absolutely decimated. The right of politics in this country is divided. Anyway, folks, give me your thoughts. If you like the video, click like. If you haven't subscribed, you can subscribe up top. There'll be another video. You can check that out as well. Till next time, take care.